Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I'm still here in my little study, in my unfinished study in my new house, waiting for the new studio where I will be filming to be built. My husband Jason, you guys have met him, is building me a studio in our backyard, and it will not be done for a couple of weeks. So Tuesday's episode I filmed here, you're getting today's, and probably I would guess 3 or 4 more. But you know I'm bringing you your content no matter what. We are not skipping an episode. As I was researching, I came across these 2 stories, and I was like, I don't think there's quite enough there to do a full episode on either of these, but they're 2 stories that I really want to talk about. These are 2 stories that have not received the media coverage that they need to have, and so I thought while we're doing this a little bit more casual setting, I'll bring these stories to you and we can talk about them. If you guys have some other stories you'd like me to hit while we're doing this, I'm happy to do that. The first story that I've got is a really horrible story about what I think is pretty much everybody's worst nightmare. And then the second story is not really a case, but more about a situation that's going on in St. Louis. These are more recent stories with very little media coverage, and they are just stories that we have to talk about. Not the catchiest title I've ever come up with, but hey. Before we begin, hit the like button if you like the video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. You can also listen to me on Apple and Spotify now. I've got the Dining with Death podcast. There are all the old Dining with Death episodes just in podcast form. That's an archival podcast. I won't be making new episodes for that one. But then I also have Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I put up 5 episodes in the beginning, and you're going to be getting 2 episodes a week on that one, and they've been re-recorded. The audio on them is great. We also have a big fundraiser going on, and you know I will talk about that at the end of the video. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. The first story I want to talk about is one of the most terrifying stories I've heard in a while. It is the story of a murdered preacher's wife, a murdered pregnant preacher's wife. It is very much a horror film type vibe. If you've seen Strangers or Jackals or any of those kind of home invasion stories, this is real life. This is Amanda Blackburn. She was a beautiful wife and mother, married to this man, Davey Blackburn, who was a pastor. Now, when I first heard about this case, I have to admit, the minute you hear that a pastor's wife is found dead, history, I mean, we have reasons for feeling the way we do. You'll look sideways at the guy. But when I started researching this case, what I found, woof, people hate this guy. They hated on him so hard, and we're going to talk about it. Amanda and Davey had recently moved from South Carolina to Indianapolis to start a new church. On November 10th, Amanda is at home in this neighborhood. Now, you can very clearly see this is a nice home in a nice neighborhood, and that's why this is kind of a nightmare story. Davey Blackburn leaves the house at around 6 a.m. in the morning on the 10th, and he goes to work out at the gym. He left his house not knowing that there were 3 monsters sitting outside watching him. Now, Davey admits that he left the back door open because at the time, Amanda is the only one that had a house key, I guess, for that door, and it was on her keychain. So he went out the back door and left it unlocked so he could get back in. I guess he figured, maybe Amanda wouldn't be up when he got home. As soon as Davey is gone, as soon as he pulls out of the driveway, these 3 ghouls break into the house with pregnant Amanda, and her little boy, toddler, at home. Look, I've already admitted to you guys that I'm becoming more jaded as I do this, but I'm going to warn you off the bat, I'm going to be really hard on these people because this is just the most heinous crime. I cannot even begin to imagine what this poor woman went through. She turns and sees these 3 guys in her house at, 7 o'clock in the morning. She's in the sanctity of her own home, the home that they pay for, the home that they worked for. There's nothing worse than a damn thief. And here they are invading her space. It is such a violation, and there is just nothing I hate worse than people who try to skate by while other people work for what they have. I'm definitely not a bootstraps person. I know some people have it real hard. I do. I understand that. But I've been working since I'm 17 years old. I've gone without. I've been broke, the whole bit. Choices, people. We all have choices. So these three guys break into this house early in the morning and accost this woman and her baby. The three men are Larry Taylor Jr., Jalen E. Watson, and Diano Gordon. So these guys accost Amanda in her house. They take her debit card, and two of them make her give them her PIN, and then they go to her bank to withdraw money. Jalen and Diano are the guys that leave, and that leaves this monster's not even a strong enough word, this maniac, Larry Taylor Jr., alone with Amanda. Larry Taylor then tries to rape Amanda. He strips her clothes off her as she is screaming and fighting him, begging to at least be able to put her son in his crib so he won't have to watch it. This makes me so mad. I could go to the prison and not feel a bit bad about it. When Amanda fights back, it makes Larry angry. And so you know what he does? He pulls out his gun and he shoots her in the head. He shoots her in the back, he shoots her in the chest, and she dies. This piece of shit then stands over this woman and watches her bleed out. And when Diano and Jalen return, he says, "I smoked her." It does not get any more disgusting, more evil, or more depraved. Fortunately, they do leave the toddler alone in his crib. They don't go and kill the baby too. So these guys take the cash, they take some things from the house, and they leave. And then Davey Blackburn pulls back into the driveway around 8 a.m. and walks in the back door and finds his wife, his pregnant wife, laying on the floor in a pool of blood, and his toddler son is in his crib screaming. Amanda is naked. She's unconscious. She's been absolutely tortured. She's been shot. It's just, it makes me so mad. Davey calls 911. The EMTs arrive. There's nothing they can do for Amanda. Larry, Jalen, and Diano had been on a crime spree. They'd been stalking this neighborhood and kind of marked the houses that they wanted to target. And they were there that morning to do some robberies. And when they saw Davey leave, they decided that was the house they were going to hit. I should say hit next. They had hit the house down the street before this. Now, this case is not very well documented, and I do not know how they narrowed in on these guys, except for that there was some surveillance footage captured like by a Ring camera of one of the guys walking through the neighborhood, and then they caught the car that they were in. I don't know if they caught the license plate number. Like I said, this case needs more coverage. I just turned my camera a little bit because there's a glare coming in through the window. This is a real professional operation I'm running here, you guys. I need a little levity because I'm getting mad. So all three of these killers are caught within about 2 weeks of the murder. And I could be wrong on this because, like I said, this case is not documented well at all. I think they got a lead on one of the guys that was tied to the vehicle. And from then they gathered from people that they interviewed that this guy was always with these two other guys. That's what it sounds like happened to me. When they arrest these guys, they find out that Larry Taylor is 18 years old. This is an 18-year-old, I guess technically adult, teenager who did this. This is a born evil monster. Some monsters are created, some monsters are born. I believe most monsters are a little bit of each. This is a born monster. If you are someone that can walk into someone else's home, strip a woman naked, a pregnant woman naked, throw a baby in a crib, rape that woman, and shoot her in the head for absolutely nothing, you are a monster. I do know that the police were able to get some information from the burglary that these three guys committed before they went into the Blackburn home, and that also helped to identify them. A neighbor of the Blackburns comes forward and says that around 6:45 they heard a shot, and then they heard another shot around 6:55. So this guy's just in there shooting her for 10 minutes. So when the cops get these three guys into custody, Diano and Jalen turn on Larry. Now, I kind of mentioned this before, but as soon as the word of this murder gets out, people immediately turned on Davey Blackburn. Like I said, there's reasons for that. Preachers and pastors who end up with dead wives are very often involved. We've got the Micah Miller story happening right now. Whether he pulled the trigger or not, that man has some culpability. But what I found on Facebook from the time of the murder it's pretty vile, you guys. Like I said, the posts are from years ago. But as I sat there and I read them, I'm going to be really honest with you. That wasn't my proudest moment as a member of the true crime community. The things that people are saying, like days after this murder, are absolutely horrific. That Davey's a killer, that somebody needs to take the baby and put the baby with a guardian. put the baby with DCFS. They're calling him a murderer. They're calling him a piece of shit. They're saying he set the whole thing up, that he's a liar and a con man, and he hired black guys to do his bidding. They are literally hanging this man in the virtual town square. And it turns out he had nothing to do with it. Since we're just kind of chatting today, reading those comments back was a really good lesson for me. It was a really good reminder that just because somebody belongs to this group or that group, it doesn't mean they're bad. We're very hard on preachers here on this channel because a lot of preachers are con men. That is a fact. This particular preacher appears to be a decent guy. I posted a short last week of 3 guys carjacking a family in their own driveway. They're like shooting into the air as they walk up. These people are terrified. There's a whole bunch of little kids in the car and they're just begging and screaming, please just let us get the kids out of the car and you can have the car. The racist comments that I got on that video made me sick to my stomach. Yes, the 3 carjackers were black. I started deleting comments because I don't want that kind of stuff in my space. But then some of them I left up because I want those people to be outed. And they would say like a kind of an innuendo. And I'd be like, what do you mean? Explain your racism to me. As if white people don't commit crimes. Today, again, we've got 3 black men who did something absolutely unthinkable. When was the last time we talked about a black family annihilator on this channel? When was the last time we talked about a black man who kills his whole family? Let's not pretend that there aren't horrible people in every race. If you are horrible and vile, I'm calling you horrible and vile. I don't care what race you belong to. And if you are one of the people that thinks that you can say racist things because a group of one certain race does something awful, get help or an IQ test because you're really not that bright. There are bad people in every race, in every culture, in every religion, in every gender identity, in every sexual orientation group. In every group in the world, there are good people and there are bad people. And if you can't figure that out, you ain't too bright. I feel for Davey Blackburn in this case. I really do. Can you imagine you lose your pregnant wife? So you lose not only your wife, but the prospective baby that was coming. And then the entire internet turns on you and blames you when you didn't do it. This man has lived an actual nightmare and I feel for him. So the 3 men get arrested and they go on trial. This is where things go a little bit sideways. Diano Gordon is sentenced to 35 years. He committed the robbery, but then he gets some sort of a deal and it ends up only being 25 years. I don't agree with that. When you are involved in a crime and someone dies in the commission of that crime, you are just as guilty as the murderer. This man doesn't deserve to get out of prison when he's in his 40s. He's too dangerous, in my opinion. But there was some sort of a plea deal where he turned on Larry and gave evidence. Same for Jalen E. Watson. He originally got 29 years, but then in December of 2022, this is kind of why this is a more recent story, he gets his sentence reduced. Jalen ends up with like 10 years of prison time and 5 years of house arrest. The other 14 years of his initial sentence get suspended. Neither Jalen nor Diano pulled the trigger. I get that. They weren't even in the house when Larry Taylor did. I get that. But Amanda Blackburn would still be alive today had they not broken into her house. When COVID first hit and people were dying left and right, I lost quite a few classmates. And some of their families were COVID deniers and did not want to put it on the internet or in their obituary that they had died from COVID. So they were saying things like they had a heart condition or they had an autoimmune disease. It was all I could do, not to say anything in a time of grief. I know better than that. But look, if you have hemophilia, let's say hemophilia, that's a disease where your blood doesn't clot. You easily bleed out from a wound that most people wouldn't die from. And you get attacked by a dog. You bleed out and you die. What killed you? The hemophilia didn't kill you. The dog killed you. If not for the dog, the hemophilia would not have killed you. If not for Larry, Jalen, and Diano breaking into Amanda Blackburn's house that morning, she would not be dead. Period. All 3 of them are guilty of her murder. So Larry Taylor goes on trial, but it ends in a mistrial. I found this very interesting. The jury was not initially told that Amanda was pregnant. When they found out that she was pregnant, they wanted to know why Larry wasn't being charged with the murder of the fetus. I have the same question. If a woman who is 12 weeks pregnant decides to terminate her pregnancy, that is her choice. But if someone else terminates that pregnancy, that's not her choice. So in this case, in this scenario, yes, the fetus that was going to be carried to full term should have been on the docket, should have been listed as a victim. So the judge acknowledges that this is a mistake and he declares a mistrial really quickly. Then COVID hit, and of course, everything came to a screeching halt. Finally, in September of 2022, so this is 7 years after Amanda's murder, Larry Taylor goes on trial. He's found guilty on 2 robbery charges, as well as 12 other charges he was facing, and he got 86 years. Again, why not life? Then we find out that Larry Taylor has been charged with additional crimes that he committed before Amanda's murder. So this is an 18-year-old kid. Menace is not the right word. A menace is somebody that, breaks into cars and graffitis. This guy's a demon. 18 years old, out robbing, killing, and raping. That's just some next level evil. I can't put my mind around being that evil at that age. I don't know why it bothers me so much that he was so young, but it does. I am so sad for Amanda and her family, her son, her husband, but I am really glad that this piece of shit is locked up forever. I guess Davey has gone on to remarry, and I hope their son is doing well. It's a horrible story from beginning to end. Davey has been through a lot, and I will never forget the lesson that this case taught me in not jumping to conclusions about someone. I hope he's doing okay, and I hope that little boy is going to do okay without his mom. All right, I've moved the camera again. I'm trying to stay out of that glare right there. Okay, there is something happening in St. Louis that we need to talk about. St. Louis is one of the most violent cities in America. In fact, it is the murder capital of America. It has a much, much higher murder rate than other cities, even cities that are bigger than it is. Jason's brother and his wife and their 2 beautiful little girls live in St. Louis. And then Jason's brother's ex-wife and their son live in St. Louis. And I worry about them. I see, all of the statistics, and St. Louis is a very dangerous place. Let me give you some stats. In the past decade, 2,000 people have been murdered in St. Louis. 2,000. Those are like 90s murder numbers. But I have a stat that's even more shocking. 1,100 of those murders are unsolved. Now that is some bullshit. I know the police job is difficult. I do. I understand that. But when you are not even batting 50%, they're at like 40% solved cases. That's horrible. Look at this map of the neighborhoods in St. Louis. Well, this part of St. Louis. In these neighborhoods, if you get murdered, your case is not getting solved. You have like a 38% chance of having your murder solved. That is unbelievable. That's like drug cartel numbers. We talk about this all the time here. Every single life matters. It doesn't matter if you're poor. It doesn't matter if you're a drug dealer. It doesn't matter if you're a sex worker. The police are tasked with solving your murder. Our justice system demands that your murder is solved and that your killer is brought to justice. There's this one particular neighborhood in St. Louis called Fairground. There have been like 40 homicides in like an 8-block little square. 40 homicides in 10 years. In 2017, there was a triple murder. 3 young Black women, Dominique Lewis, Reba Moore, and Shanice White, were killed in this house on John Avenue, and no one has ever been arrested, let alone charged. If there was a triple murder in my town, if there was a triple murder in Houston, if there was a triple murder in Miami, they would just do everything they could to solve that. And in St. Louis, it's just kind of, now we all know that murder rates climb when poverty rates climb. It's not an excuse, but it's a fact. Desperate people do desperate things. We know that. Just because your circumstances suck does not give you the right to take something from someone else. But we know that poverty and crime are linked. They always have been. Over the years in St. Louis, apparently the trust in the police is it's been eroded. I found page after page of cases where people are saying, it's shoddy police work or no police work at all. They can't get the police to return their phone calls. They can't get the police to return an email. Sometimes the police are just lazy, and sometimes they're just outright negligent. They're so used to crime that when a murder happens, especially in those areas, in those neighborhoods, it's an everyday occurrence. What does that lead to? That leads to criminals feeling confident that if they do kill someone, if they do commit a crime, nobody's going to do anything about it. I mean, I'm literally just sitting here describing the way our justice system works. If the cops don't do their job, the bad guys are going to take over. Now, here are some other numbers that are absolutely not okay. Black people in St. Louis make up only 44% of the city's population, yet they make up 90% of the murder victims. Make that make sense to me. make that make sense. I already know what you're gonna say if you're racist. You're gonna say it's black on black crime. So what? Every life matters, remember? And every criminal needs to be brought to justice. It gets worse. 67% of all cases with white victims get solved. For black victims, it's around 38. I don't care if it's a black person killing a black person. That black victim still matters. That black killer needs to go to prison. We don't deny racism exists. We talk about it. Talking about things is the only way we find solutions. We don't sweep things under the rug and pretend they're not happening. When the triple murder occurred, the girls' mothers, their family members got together and they would hold vigils all the time. They didn't get any news coverage. The cops didn't call them back. One of the mothers says she's written like 100 emails. The cop maybe calls her once a year. He doesn't return voicemails. He doesn't respond to her when she goes to the station. Not okay. As of 2022, apparently the murder rate in St. Louis has fallen a little bit. So people were like, oh, well, that's great. Yeah, here's the thing. Guess what the police are doing? They're changing some of the murders to justifiable homicide. That puts them in a different category and it makes it look like the murder rate has dropped. That is shady AF. It's pretty shady to make your murder numbers look lower by classifying certain cases as justifiable homicide. So let's take a case where it was maybe 2 people at a drug house. Normally, if there's a shooting and 1 person dies, that person is classified as a homicide victim. Instead, they're classifying it as a justifiable homicide for the person if they owned the home or stayed in the home. No, that's not right. The city has actually lowered its murder rate by reclassifying dozens and dozens of homicides as justifiable shootings. By January of this year, 2024, the murder rate has been the lowest that it's ever been on the books because of this. I wish I had a bow to wrap this up for you in, but I don't. I just realized that as I sit and do research for these episodes, day after day, I am just seeing a lot of murder in St. Louis. So I specifically went to some sites that talk about what's happening in St. Louis, and I was really shocked at what I saw. And since we're just kind of sitting and chatting today, I decided to chat about this. It's the conversation that matters. I say that all the time. If we don't talk about these problems, we are certainly never going to find any answers. Thanks for joining me today on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I appreciate you guys sticking with me through this little bump in the road here. I said it on my video on Tuesday. I tried to film enough content to get me through the construction of the shed. I literally worked 16 hours a day for like 2 weeks before we moved, and I just didn't get enough filmed. It takes me so long to research these episodes and write them, film them, edit them. I did get quite a bit in the can, almost a month's worth, but that's a lot for me. Hit the like button if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. You can also listen to my podcasts. I have 2. All of the old Dining with Death episodes have been loaded onto Spotify and Apple. That is kind of an archival podcast. There won't be any new episodes on that. It's just the audio taken from the video episodes. But my new podcast, Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee, is all re-recorded and the audio is gorgeous. I started out releasing 5 episodes, and from then on out, you're going to get to a week. The podcasts are doing really well. I'm really, really excited about it. You can also subscribe to my Patreon for a few dollars a month. You help keep the video episodes coming. And you can also join our fundraiser. This big blank space wall, I migrated as we filmed this. This is the thumbnail on my channel that will take you to the video that explains the fundraiser. We are raising money to donate to police departments that have cold case DNA in storage that's never been tested. We are trying to solve some cold cases. I hope you guys are well. It's getting hotter than hell, so take care of yourselves. Stay safe, be kind to each other, and I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.